I've lived in the northeastern part of our country my whole life, and let me tell you, we get a lot of snow here. Driving in the snow is no joke, especially if you're from a place with the same kind of weather. I live in a city where we get a ton of snow every year, and it can be a real hassle, and even dangerous. I've had to deal with this snowy weather for as long as I can remember, and I thought I got pretty good at driving in the snow. At least, that's what I thought. A few years back, one night in February, I was driving home from my friend's place. It was dark, around 8 p.m., and it had been snowing all day. I had gone to clear my friend's driveway from snow so she could go to work the next morning. Normally, it takes me 15 to 20 minutes to get to or from her house, but that night, it had already been 35 minutes, and I was only halfway home. The roads were mostly empty, but I had to drive slower than usual to avoid getting stuck or sliding off the road. I had just left the last highway and was on smaller roads heading towards my house. I was getting close to an intersection with a four-way stop. After stopping and trying to move again, my car started sliding and wouldn't budge. At this point, I was really tired and frustrated. I hadn't even gotten home from work, and all I wanted was to leave my car. I tried moving the car back and forth in the snow, but it didn't help. I felt like I was just making things worse, maybe even damaging my tires. I didn't know what to do. Should I ask someone for help or try to dig myself out? Finally, I decided to do something about it on my own. I got out of the car to kick some snow from under the tires, hoping it would help me move on the snowy road. While I was doing this, a random woman walked up to me. She didn't say anything or offer help. She just stood there, looking at me. She walked toward the stop sign with her hood over her head. I asked, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything?" She didn't answer, which made me feel weird, but I was more annoyed with my car troubles. After spending a few minutes kneeling down in the snow, using my brush to clear the snow from under my car tires, I stood up to get back into my car. The lady I noticed earlier was still there. I shouted, "Okay. Well, have a good night then," probably sounding a bit annoyed. As I opened my car door, she finally spoke in a flat, emotionless voice saying,
"Wade!"
I kept opening my door, looking at her, waiting for her to say more. Then, in a weird and creepy tone, she said,
"That is my car."
Not wanting to deal with the strange situation and the obviously unpredictable person about 30 feet away, I quickly got into my car, shut the door, and started rocking back and forth to free my car from the snow. I saw the lady standing right in front of my car, really close to touching it. If I tried to drive forward, I might have hit her. I got scared and honked my horn, then put the car in reverse. After a few honks, she moved away, but came to the driver's side and tried to open the door. The doors were locked, and I didn't understand what was happening. Then things got worse. She got angry, started hitting the door and yelled,
"This is my car, you beast!"
She kept calling me a beast and insisted it was her car. I was really scared, so I hit the gas pedal and was finally able to drive away. As I looked back in the mirror, she was running after the car, waving her arms. I tried really hard to forget about what happened and not think too much about why she did it. Anyway, forget about it. Let's not meet again, weird creatures and snow lady. As I kept driving, I still felt uneasy, trying to forget the strange encounter with the woman. Snow was falling a lot, and the roads were slippery, making it tough for me to get home. I kept looking in my rearview mirror to make sure the lady wasn't still following me. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any stranger, I saw something weird up ahead. There was a flickering light, and as I got closer, I saw a small building by the road. The sign said Snowflake Diner, and the warm light coming from it made me curious. So I decided to stop and check it out. I walked into the diner and it smelled really good, like hot coffee. Some people were talking and I sat at the counter to forget about something weird that happened earlier. The diner felt like a safe and cozy place. A nice waitress named Maggie came up to me with a friendly smile and said,
"You look like you had a tough night. How about some coffee to make you feel better?"
I said yes, and she brought me a cup. While I drank my coffee, I heard two people at a nearby booth talking about a local story. It was about a mysterious person called the Snow Queen. They said the Snow Queen would walk around snowy streets on cold nights, testing if people were kind to strangers. As I learned more about the story, I started to think that the lady I met before might have something to do with the local legend. The details were strangely alike: a person wearing a hood, a chilly winter night, and a weird meeting. Curious, I thought of asking the people who live here about the Snow Queen. Maggie, the waitress, looked excited as she started telling me stories that had been passed down for a long time. According to her, the Snow Queen is thought to be like a protector of winter, testing the kindness of the people she meets. As I heard Maggie's stories, I started thinking about the strange woman I met. I wondered if she was somehow connected to the local legend Maggie talked about. Maybe she was just a quirky person pretending to be the Snow Queen. This unexpected idea made the encounter less scary and more like a mysterious part of a bigger story. Feeling curious and a bit nervous, I decided to leave the Snowflake Diner and go home. Snow had eased up and the road seemed safer. I thanked Maggie for the coffee and stories, telling her I'd come back to the diner another time. As I drove on the quiet streets, I felt like something interesting might happen in the night. Just when I thought the story was finished, a surprise was waiting for me. Up ahead, I saw a person standing by the road, wrapped in a warm coat. It was the same lady who said I was in her car earlier. I wasn't sure what to do for a moment. I remembered the Snow Queen story and wondered if this was another challenge. After taking a deep breath, I lowered my car window and asked, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride?" I was surprised when the woman's attitude suddenly changed. She seemed relieved, like she was waiting for someone to help. She told me her car broke down and she was stuck in the cold. At that moment, the strange encounter we had before felt far away. Even though I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, I offered to give her a ride to the closest service station. As she got in the car, she thanked me, and her earlier unfriendly attitude turned into gratefulness. We talked a bit on the short drive, and she told me her name was Maya. When I got to the service station, Mia thanked me again and promised to figure out how to tow her car. As I left, I thought about how unpredictable the night had been. It all began as a weird and unsettling meeting, but it turned into a story full of surprises. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking that the Snow Queen legend might have influenced what happened that night. Mia, the mysterious woman, had tested my patience and willingness to help, showing a side of her character I hadn't expected. Finally, the snowy night took me on a special adventure. It was not an ordinary journey. I experienced strange things, heard local stories, and saw how life in the northeastern part of our country can be surprising. I still remember that night, and it has made me realize how unexpected things can make our experiences more interesting. That night showed me that the most fascinating stories are the ones we don't see coming. I've been driving a taxi in Windyville for more than 15 years. Before that, I lived in a town called Desert Springs, and that's where I started working as a taxi driver. Nowadays, there are new ways to get around like Zoom Ride. But my story goes back to the time before all that became popular. Windyville gets really cold in the winter, with freezing temperatures all the time. The taxi job I had wasn't like the typical yellow cabs you see in movies. It was more modern. You used your own car, put a sign on top when you were working, and the company took a cut. But the good part was, you could choose your own hours and charge what you thought was a fair price. Back then, my job as a taxi driver was pretty cool. I didn't have a fixed schedule, so I could hit the road whenever I wanted. On holidays, I worked more hours because more people needed rides. I didn't have family nearby, so holidays were just like any other day for me. Now, let me tell you a story that happened on Christmas Eve. I started my taxi shift at 10 in the morning, and things were going great. Lots of customers were getting rides, and they didn't mind paying a bit more because it was really busy. I was making almost $80 per hour, which was awesome. At 9 p.m., I had been working for 11 hours and was still earning good money. Then, it started snowing. At first, the snowfall was light, and I thought I had some time before it got worse. I stopped at a fast food place to quickly eat, and then I went back out to continue working in the night. There weren't as many people around, but some taxi drivers had finished for the day, so there was less competition. I picked up a small group of people from a busy street and took them to a neighborhood with old, close-together houses. They were nice, and they gave me a good tip. As I was driving away, a guy appeared from behind a parked car and signaled for a ride. It was tough to see him in the snow and darkness, and he seemed a bit nervous in his dark hoodie. But that wasn't unusual in this area. I pulled up, and he got in. "Hey, where are you headed?" I asked as I started driving. He didn't reply. I asked again, more seriously this time. "Where do you want me to take you?"
Just stop here.
He said firmly, handing me a torn piece of paper with a poorly written address on it. I entered it into my GPS, but nothing came up. I told him I didn't know where it was.
Just stop here.
He repeated in a serious tone. We pulled over on an empty street with no cars, no people, and no lights. I put the car in park, and that's when everything went crazy. A man turned around and stared out the window. Suddenly, he jumped at me, holding a small gun against my head. He shouted for my wallet, keys, and everything else. I was really scared, and all I could think about was the pain from the gun against my head. I tried to get my wallet, but I wasn't quick enough. He hit the back of my head with the gun, and everything became blurry. I felt a terrible pain. I tossed my wallet onto the passenger seat. I didn't even know what I did wrong, but he hit me again. After that, I blacked out. I woke up on the side of the road, surrounded by snow and feeling super cold. My car, wallet, keys, and phone were all missing. My head hurt a lot, and walking was hard. I managed to reach a nearby gas station for help. Long story short, they found my car a week later outside the city, left alone. Luckily, I didn't have any lasting injuries, but getting new things was tough. Without my car, I couldn't go to work. The whole situation was really bad, and I still get scared thinking about that moment. What really bothers me is how mean the guy was for no reason. If he just asked nicely, I would given him my stuff. I don't get why he had to be so aggressive. He didn't want to kill me, so why did he hurt me so much when I was cooperating? After that scary incident, I started working for a bigger taxi company run by the city. They provide a car and everything, which makes me feel safer. But here's the surprising part. Months later, after the Christmas incident, I picked up a passenger. She seemed normal, just needing a ride to a place I knew well. As we talked, she mentioned her friend had a similar scary experience with a taxi driver. The story she told gave me the creeps. Everything seemed too similar. The person wearing a dark hoodie, the serious way they talked, and the badly written address on a piece of paper. It felt like I was going through that terrible night all over again. The person I gave a ride to told me her friend, who was believed to be the robber, had disappeared since that incident. No one could find any clues. I felt really scared as I left her, thinking that the person who attacked me might not have just wanted money. There could be something more dangerous going on. Was I unintentionally involved in a risky situation? I told the police about this strange connection, but they didn't seem too interested. Since that day when I started working for the city taxi company, I thought things would be safer. But I couldn't shake off this uneasy feeling. I started seeing people in dark hoodies everywhere, and it gave me the creeps. Streets that I used to know so well now felt like a maze of potential dangers. I kept driving, but something unexpected happened. I picked up a passenger who seemed to know a lot about that scary night. It made me doubt the safety I thought I had. Every Christmas Eve, I drive with a knot in my stomach, worried that I might be unknowingly getting involved in someone else's strange plan. When I was about 17 years old, my family and I used to go on trips up north to do ice fishing. Our family friends had cabins in a really remote place. There was a small gas station about a mile away, and after that, it felt like it took a really long time to see anything else. Once, when we were driving to our cabin, it started snowing. I just wanted to get there, relax, and play some games. The drive was long, about 8 hours. When we arrived, it was almost 4 p.m., and since it was January, it was getting dark, and I was really tired. We parked our car at the cabin, and were ready to unpack. The cabins had these cool locks where you used a code to get the key. As I grabbed my backpack and suitcase, I saw some tracks leading to the door. I told my dad, and he casually said it was probably the cleaning person. I put in the code, opened the door, and saw a little water on the floor, thinking it was from the cleaning person. Besides that, everything looked okay. I went to my usual room, started unpacking, and when I closed the blinds, I saw fresh tracks. They were coming from the woods toward our cabin. I told my dad about it, but he didn't seem too worried. We went outside together, and we saw there were human footprints leading from the woods to our cabin. Dad called his friends, but they couldn't do much. They brought small cameras with live feeds, and we set them up inside the cabin. It was a bit of work, but it's better to be safe. A few hours later, we went to the lake, and my mom kept an eye on the cameras to make sure nobody else was in the cabin. When we got back home, Mom saw lots of notifications from the camera because it detected movement. Dad quickly called his friend, who had some kind of gun, to go inside and check. But once again, he didn't find anything suspicious. Dad decided to call the police, but the problem was our cameras were not good enough to save videos, only show live pictures. We stayed at Dad's friend's place for a few nights, always keeping an eye on the camera at our house. On the day we were supposed to go back home, the camera detected movement again. This time, my dad and his friend hurried over, thinking it was another false alarm. However, to everyone's surprise, they discovered something really creepy. In the corner of the cabin, behind a pile of firewood, we found a hidden door. We had never seen it before. My dad opened it carefully, and there was a narrow staircase going down into darkness. Weird noises on the walls, strange tracks, and unexplained things were now scarier. Dad's friend really wanted to figure it out, so he took a flashlight and went down. The rest of us waited nervously, wondering what was down there. After a long time, he came back with an old dusty journal. The journal had writings from many years, telling the story of someone secretly living beneath our cabin. It turned out that someone who liked to be alone had been hiding and watching us from a secret spot. This person was studying how we lived and trying to live secretly without us knowing. They were really interested in our family's visits, and they did everything they could to stay hidden. There was a hidden door behind the firewood that let them come and go without us noticing. When we found out about this, we were really scared and felt like our privacy was invaded. We called the police right away. They searched the hidden spot thoroughly, but the person was already gone. However, they left behind some things like a makeshift bed, empty food cans, and personal stuff. The authorities couldn't figure out who the mysterious person was. This left us with lots of questions and a weird, uneasy feeling. We couldn't understand how someone could live close to us for so long without anyone knowing. It was surprising and kind of scary. Our regular ice fishing trip turned into a spooky story because of this unexpected person. The experience really affected us. We decided to stay in a different cabin for our future trips. We couldn't shake the feeling that the hidden person might still be around, watching us. Even though nothing else happened after that day, the memory of the strange encounter stuck with us. It changed the way we felt about our cozy trips up north.